I brought donuts for the office. My coworker looked me in the eye and said, "Are these store-bought?" Figures. Your all looks, no effort. She'd been gunning for my role for months. So, I set up a shared drive audit. She'd been duplicating my work into her folder. The logs are attached to an email titled IP Theft Exhibit A. She'll read it right after her promotion gets pulled and before I drop. I'm not someone who makes noise at work. I show up, I do my job, I don't play politics. I'm the type that quietly stays late without complaining. I never say no when someone asks for help. I just believed that if I worked hard and didn't cause trouble, that would be enough. But I learned that's not how it works. Not in my office. Not with people like Natalie. Natalie started in our department about a year after I did. She was friendly at first. Very polished. Always said the right things. Complimented my outfits. Asked for tips on how I organized my work. She played this supportive, team player role, but there was something underneath that I couldn't explain at the time. Something off. It started small. She'd volunteer to shadow me on projects. I didn't think anything of it. I figured, okay, maybe she wants to learn. Maybe she's trying to grow. So I let her sit in on calls. I added her to some working docs. I even gave her access to folders I normally kept to myself. I wanted to be helpful. Then I started noticing weird patterns. I'd write a weekly report for a client, and a day later, she'd post an analysis summary in the team chat with the same wording. Like exact same. Paragraphs lifted, just reworded slightly. I thought it was coincidence. Or maybe she just really liked my structure. Then there was the time I created a presentation deck for a cross-departmental review. I spent 3 days on it. Designed a layout, built the visuals, polished the data. The day before I was supposed to present, Natalie forwarded a deck to our manager. It was hers, supposedly. Different title page, but inside? Same graphs. Same structure. My phrasing. My slide order. Word for word in places. I remember just staring at the email, heart pounding. I went through every slide. It was mine, but the metadata was wiped. It had her name on it. Her email was listed as creator. That's when something clicked. She wasn't just learning from me.
She was stealing from me.
I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. I thought, maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe it's a coincidence. But it kept happening. Little things here and there. The whole data sets I'd spent days cleaning, showing up in her independent analysis. Clients I'd managed suddenly being assigned to her for support. Every time I made something good, she was right behind me with a shiny, tweaked version of it. She was slowly erasing me.
Replacing me.
I brought it up once, carefully, with my manager. I didn't accuse. I just asked if there'd been overlap. He brushed it off. Said, "Natalie's been stepping up a lot. You two make a great team." That night, I couldn't sleep. So I started saving everything. Quietly. I created a private folder outside the shared drive. I backed up my documents with timestamps. Every version of every report, spreadsheet, presentation, I kept them. I started using unique identifiers in my data tables, things only I would recognize. I renamed my files using personal codes. I even started exporting screen recordings while I worked on certain documents just to have proof they were mine. It became a routine. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't complain. I just collected everything. And I watched her. She'd log into my folders at weird times, late at night, early mornings, weekends. I saw the timestamps. I had the logs. She'd open files, download them, then days later submit eerily similar work with her name on it. She was careful, but not careful enough. Still, I waited. Then came the donuts. I brought them in on a Friday. Just a box of assorted donuts from the local bakery near my train stop. A simple thing, I was trying to be kind. I set them on the counter in the break room like I always do. Natalie walked in, looked right at them, then at me, and said loud enough for half the office to hear, "Store-bought? Figures. Your all looks no effort." She smiled like it was a joke. Something in me snapped. Not in an angry way. Just cold.
Numb.
I realized in that moment she thought she'd already won. She didn't even have to hide it anymore. That's when I started putting together the report. It wasn't just logs or screenshots. I built a forensic-level breakdown of our work overlaps. I went back 6 months, created side-by-sides of our files, highlighted matching language, showed the original timestamps of my work versus the updated ones she'd shared. I labeled every section clearly. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. All clean, all backed by data. I wrote a summary too. Dry and factual. No emotional language. Just what happened, when, and where. I included our shared drive's access history, her file modifications, even version history on Google Docs. Then I waited. I heard rumors she was up for a promotion. Senior analyst. A role I'd been quietly working toward for 2 years. She'd been cozying up to our manager, offering to lead meetings, talking more in calls, taking credit wherever she could. I kept my head down and waited. The day came. A full team Zoom meeting was scheduled with no clear agenda.
Cameras on.
Everyone smiling. Our manager started talking about someone who's really gone above and beyond. I hovered over the send button on the email I had drafted the night before. Then he said her name, Natalie. And I sent it. Subject: IP theft, Exhibit A recipients, HR, legal, director, manager. No emotion, just proof. My name wasn't even mentioned in the body of the email. I didn't need it to be. 15 minutes later, Natalie turned off her camera. Half an hour after that, she left the call. I didn't say a word. She was supposed to receive a congratulatory follow-up email that afternoon. It never came. Her LinkedIn didn't change. She didn't show up to the next few team meetings. A week later, her name disappeared from our project tracker. But something still didn't sit right with me. Because as I kept going through the access logs, I noticed something else. Something worse. She hadn't just been looking at my files. She had been sharing them, sending links externally, downloading data into unknown folders. And one name kept popping up next to hers in the logs. Someone higher up. Someone I had trusted even more. The name I saw next to hers in the logs stopped me cold. Tyler. Senior manager. My skip level. The one who always said I had potential. Who once told me he saw me leading this team in 2 years. He had access to every shared folder in our department. I never thought twice about it. Managers get full visibility, that's normal. But the logs showed something else. He wasn't just opening files occasionally. He was in my folders often. Odd times. Quiet times. Times I wasn't working. Weekends. Late nights. Files only I touched. And then there were the downloads. He'd pulled reports I hadn't submitted yet. Decks that hadn't been shared. He'd access raw drafts with spelling errors I always cleaned up before the final versions. The kind of documents you don't open unless you're looking for something. He wasn't just reviewing team progress. He was watching me. I checked again. In 4 months, he hadn't opened a single file in Natalie's folders. Not once.
But mine?
At least 73 distinct files. Some accessed multiple times. One folder in particular, my strategy notes for a major cross-department initiative I'd been planning, had been downloaded in full. Then 3 weeks later, Natalie pitched a vision deck to leadership using the exact structure I designed. Word for word in parts. I recognized my own internal notes quoted on her slides. She didn't come up with it. I had. I just hadn't shared it with anyone yet, except it had been sitting in that folder. Tyler downloaded it. Then Natalie used it. And somehow, she got a 1:1 with the VP to discuss long-term alignment. That's when I realized it wasn't just Natalie stealing. He was giving it to her. And that meant I was up against more than just one person.
It was both of them.
Maybe more. It made sense now. Why no one listened when I raised concerns. Why Natalie was getting praise for my projects. Why my own manager seemed unsure of who did what. Why I kept hearing about collaboration on things I had created alone. I stopped feeling numb. I started feeling angry. But I didn't rush. Instead, I went deeper. I requested full access logs from IT, quietly, through a connection I had in another department. I told them I was investigating discrepancies in team collaboration. That part was true. They didn't ask questions, just sent me what I needed. I got 2 months worth of metadata. Shared drive. Version histories. File sharing logs. Access times. External link activity. And it got worse. Natalie had downloaded files at least 5 times, then sent them out of network. Not just open sent. Her name showed up in external activity logs. Once to a personal Gmail account. Once to an unknown Dropbox. Twice to her boyfriend's domain. He ran a freelance data firm, I found out. And Tyler? He'd accessed those same files shortly before. Almost like he flagged them for her. Or maybe she asked him to. The folder labeled Q3 Optimization Proposal, my folder, was open 3 hours before she submitted her own refined growth pitch to our VP. Everything started to align.
It was a system.
I built it. Tyler passed it. Natalie delivered it. They moved like a machine. I didn't just feel stolen from. I felt erased. And that's when I decided to take it higher. Not just to HR, but way higher. I compiled everything. Not just the original IP theft report. I added a second file, titled Internal Exploitation Chain, Tier 2. I wrote a timeline, a diagram. I used corporate safe language, but didn't soften the reality. I laid it out clean. My file created, Tyler accessed, Natalie downloaded, Natalie submitted under her name, project awarded to Natalie, credit redistributed. I tied it to performance reviews, promotion cycles, client feedback. I even found a few billing hours that lined up in ways that looked wrong. They had potentially billed client work under her name using my research. That pushed it into compliance territory. And that meant one thing: outside counsel. So I prepared one more email. This one wasn't for my manager. It wasn't even for HR. It was for our legal department's anonymous ethics hotline. Fully documented, fully sourced, sent from a private address, with every piece of evidence I had collected. Then I waited. Natalie was already gone from meetings, probably on forced leave. But Tyler? Still smiling, still leading stand-ups, still mentoring junior staff. That wouldn't last long, because I wasn't the only one he'd been watching. And soon, I'd find someone else whose work had been copied. About a week passed after I submitted everything to the ethics line. No one contacted me directly. I didn't expect them to. That's how it works in big companies. When legal gets involved, they go silent. Quiet meetings start happening behind closed doors. People move around without explanation. But I started to see signs. First, Tyler canceled his weekly team check-in for the first time in 6 months. No reason given. Just a vague message from his assistant that he'd be offline for a few days. Then, 2 senior HR reps were added to our department's Slack channel. No announcement. Just sitting there, not saying anything. And then one morning, the folder structure on our shared drive changed. All of Natalie's folders were gone. Just wiped. Nothing archived. No transfer of ownership. No reassignment. Like she'd never worked here. That would have been enough. But then something happened I didn't expect. A junior analyst named Priya reached out to me privately. She'd only been on the team for about 5 months. Quiet. Detail-oriented. Good work. She asked if she could speak to me off the record. I agreed. She told me that Natalie had taken one of her reports, word for word, and submitted it in a leadership deck a month ago. The formatting, data, even the error in the chart label, exactly the same. When Priya saw it, she was shocked, but she thought she'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd saved it wrong. Maybe she'd uploaded it to the wrong folder. Natalie told her she must have misremembered. But Priya remembered. And now she had doubts. She wanted to know if anything weird had happened to me. I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. I asked if she'd be willing to check her access logs. I helped her pull them. What we found matched the same pattern. Her report opened by Tyler, accessed by Natalie, submitted under Natalie's name. It wasn't just me.
It was a pattern.
They'd done it to others. At least 3 that we could prove. Always junior staff. Always people too new or quiet to challenge anything. I found myself wondering, how long had they been doing this? I reached out to a guy who had left the team 6 months ago, Noel. He used to be the most talented data scientist on our floor. Brilliant, but underappreciated. Left abruptly, no explanation. I messaged him on LinkedIn. Told him I needed to ask about something important. He agreed to a call. At first, he was guarded. But when I told him Natalie and Tyler's names, he got quiet. Then he said, "They took my model, my whole optimization algorithm, repackaged it, and sold it to another department as Natalie's." He tried to speak up. He told his manager, then HR. Nothing happened. He said he felt like they turned it around on him, called him difficult, said he wasn't being collaborative. Eventually, he got tired and left. I asked if he still had proof.
He did.
That changed everything. I added his case to the report. Priya's too. Labeled each one. Separate exhibits. All showing the same pattern. Intellectual theft, facilitated by access, protected by position. What started as one stolen file had become a full system of abuse. But the real twist came later. One night, I was backing up my personal drive. I opened an old folder I hadn't touched in months, one where I stored brainstorming notes, raw ideas I never developed. I don't know what made me open it. Inside, I found a doc titled Q4 Campaign Mock V1. I didn't remember sharing it with anyone. It was full of half-baked ideas, rough outlines, notes to myself. Nothing polished. But one of those ideas, an obscure, small-time marketing approach I'd only toyed with, had recently been rolled out by another department. Under Tyler's name. I checked the drive logs. 2 weeks before the pitch, Tyler had opened that file. Downloaded it. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just Natalie. She was the tool. He was the constant. Tyler had been doing this long before her. And probably still was with others. Quietly harvesting raw ideas from junior staff, molding them, assigning them to favorites. He didn't just help Natalie. He used her. And now he was still here. Still smiling. Still managing teams. Probably grooming the next Natalie. And I knew my report wasn't enough. He'd survived that. I had to go deeper. I didn't sleep much after I found that. The idea that Natalie was just one of many, it made me sick. All this time, I thought she was the problem. But she was just the one who got caught. Tyler was behind it. He didn't need to steal entire projects. Just pieces. Ideas. Concepts. Enough to repackage and assign to someone else. Someone he could control. I went back through the logs again. Not just mine. Priya's. Noelle's. Even 2 others who had left under strange circumstances. Same thing. Tyler would open raw files, early drafts, unfinished templates. Files that didn't belong to him. Then, weeks later, those same concepts would surface in polished form, never credited to the person who started them. He had a system. He never did the stealing himself. He picked someone like Natalie to present the work. Someone ambitious. Someone who wanted promotions, who'd say yes to anything. He gave them just enough spotlight, protected them from blowback, and kept them close. And when things got messy, he let them fall. Natalie was gone. But Tyler? He was already moving on. 2 weeks after the investigation started, he introduced a new hire during our team's sync. A young analyst named Grace. Fresh out of grad school. Bright, eager, full of energy. He assigned her to work directly under his mentorship. Just like Natalie. I watched her closely. First week, she was given high-level access for learning purposes. Same as Natalie had been. Then he invited her to shadow a project I'd been managing for months. She started showing up to meetings. No role. Just observing. I knew where this was going. This time I didn't wait. I reached out to Grace. I asked her to be careful. I didn't accuse. I just said, keep copies of your work. Timestamp everything. Don't share drafts unless you trust who's watching. She looked confused. A little nervous. But she listened. She thanked me. A few days later, she messaged me quietly. Tyler had asked her to put together a summary of ideas from the shared folder. Specifically, one of mine. A proposal I hadn't submitted yet. She asked if that was normal. It wasn't. Not even close. That same day, I saw edits being made to my document. I hadn't touched it. Grace hadn't either. It was Tyler. He had opened it, copied text, and pasted parts into a new folder labeled Leadership Prep Materials. He was already lining her up to be the next Natalie. And this time, he wasn't even hiding it. That's when I decided I had to go outside the company. HR had gone quiet. Legal hadn't responded. I was being watched. I could feel it. Tyler had too much power, too many connections. And he was careful. He never put anything in writing. So I did something I'd never done before. I went to a journalist. Not some big outlet. Just a professional contact. Someone who'd once written about corporate IP abuse in white-collar environments. I shared redacted files.
Proof.
Patterns.
Logs.
Names hidden for now. She was interested. Very. She said it was one of the cleanest, most structured examples she'd seen. She told me that if even half of it checked out, it would be enough for a full exposé. But I needed one thing more. Someone internal who would go on record. So I went to Priya. Then Noelle. Then Grace. All three said yes. Not with their names yet, but with their words. Their stories. Their versions of what I had lived. Together, we put together a packet.
Not just an email this time.
A full dossier. Evidence of abuse of power, manipulation of junior staff, pattern of IP theft, and misuse of company systems to promote favored employees. Dozens of files, documents, and statements. And one final section, risk summary, corporate liability, outlined how these practices could open the company to lawsuits, client breaches, and public damage. The kind that mattered to shareholders. The kind that couldn't be brushed off in silence. I sent it to 3 places: the journalist, the company's board ethics committee, and Tyler himself.
Directly.
No threats. No message.
Just the facts.
And then I waited. Because if there's one thing people like Tyler fear, it's not getting caught. It's being watched. 3 days after I sent the dossier, Tyler stopped coming to work. No warning. No handoff. His calendar vanished. His assistant said he was on leave for personal matters. But I knew. The journalist called me the next morning. Her editor had greenlit the story. They were running it full feature, with legal clearance. She asked if I wanted to be anonymous. I said yes. But Priya said no. She wanted her name on it. Noelle agreed too. They were tired of being quiet. Grace stayed anonymous, but she sent in her own signed statement. When the article dropped, it hit fast. Front page of the business section. The manager who made a career out of other people's work. It was all there. The access logs. The file theft. The anonymous ethics complaint. Quotes from multiple employees. One section even listed Natalie by name, a now former employee who received a promotion under suspicious circumstances before her sudden departure. The fallout started before noon. The company released a statement calling the allegations serious and promised an internal investigation. Then someone leaked an internal memo. Tyler was being terminated, effective immediately. Legal had found credible evidence of misconduct, data misuse, and ethical violations. But that wasn't the real ending. That came later, when Natalie tried to resurface. She posted on LinkedIn the same week, saying she was open to new opportunities and that she'd grown so much as a leader. Someone commented under the post linking the article. It went viral. By the next day, her post was deleted. Her profile went private. I heard she lost a job offer after the story came out. Her boyfriend's company, the one she sent files to, lost 2 contracts linked to ours. He tried to deny it, but the access logs didn't lie. Grace didn't get pulled into it. I made sure of that. She kept her head down, stayed quiet, and eventually got promoted, properly. Not because someone handed her credit, but because she did the work. Priya's name being in the article led to something bigger. A new job. Better pay. Better title. A company that saw her for what she was worth. Noelle was contacted by one of the firms he'd interviewed with months ago. They said they had read the article. They offered him a position with more pay and an apology for overlooking him before. And me? I stayed. Not because I owed the company anything. I didn't. But I needed to see it through. When they offered me the position Natalie once chased, senior analyst, I accepted. But not out of pride. Out of proof. I updated my title. I cleaned my folders. I deleted every extra copy I'd made in fear. I finally slept through the night. HR called me once, weeks later. Said they were reviewing internal controls. They asked how I discovered the abuse. I just said, I paid attention. I didn't look away. That was it. I never heard from Tyler. Never saw Natalie again.
Didn't want to.
I already got what I needed. Because for once, the work spoke for itself. And they couldn't steal that anymore.